This is Bootstrapped Web, episode 43. It's the podcast for you, the founder who learns by doing as you bootstrap your business online. I'm Brian.
And I'm Jordan.
All right, Jordan, let's do this.
Yes,
So
today we're answering listener questions, a little Q&A. So we're going to get into, and if you enjoy this and you want to hear your questions answered and discussed and kind of turned over and chewed on, then send us your questions. But before we jump into that, why don't we do a little update? Brian, what's been happening since last time we spoke?
Man, I don't know. This product, this course launch that I'm working on, Productize, it's coming along. I'm really excited about it, but it is stressful, man. I am like in that crunch time. I've set a date, October 21st. I hope I stick to that. I don't know if I can or not at this point. I have a lot of work to do. I've written all the lessons, which is like well over 100 pages of lesson material, but now I'm producing all the videos, which is a lot of work, like recording and editing. You know, I've got like HD videos set up here, so it takes a lot to kind of edit these things. So I'm working like later at night than I usually do. I'm working on the weekends, really trying to. It's crunch time, you know. And the thing is, you know, again with the kid at home and all, I've got these like short windows of work time, especially like the windows of time when I'm here in the office, away from the house, that I really need to be productive, and I feel like I am productive. It's just I don't have enough of those hours, and that's kind of stressing me out a little bit. But
yeah, I hear that. I think it's the nature of it. So you're producing videos like with you on screen, not just screen capture.
Right. I kind of wish it was just screen capture. But you know, it's me speaking to the camera.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I think it adds a lot of quality. I like the way that it's coming out, and I'm mixing in like I am mixing in like screencasts and the video footage. So you know, there's a lot of work that goes into that. I mean, aside from that, of course, I'm recording like an explainer video. I've been writing these guest articles. I am a guest on other people's podcasts, so doing a whole crunch of like publicity stuff and still producing the course, and I'm like scheduling out the launch sequence, right? So I've got, you know, some things planned for that over the next 3 weeks. It's crunch time, man.
I think it's the nature of it. You know, there's just, you look out into the future and you think about, okay, these things you need to do, and then once you get into it, there's just so much to do and so many little things. And hopefully, a lot of it doesn't need to be redone in the future.
Yes.
Right? So you can continue to sell this. Right? That's the point of having this digital asset. That a lot of the work that goes into the course, you won't have to do again, and then you can just focus on the marketing, which is, you know, ideal.
Yeah, exactly. And I do keep that in mind as I produce each of these pieces, especially like the pre-launch sequence and the marketing videos and whatnot. I'm trying to make them kind of generic enough that they can live on for a while, and I don't need to update the details.
Right.
So that kind of stuff. But you know, so much work is going into this. I am letting email kind of fall by the wayside. I guess that's a little bit of a good thing. I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to like not checking email, but that does mean that people are waiting a little bit longer than usual to get a reply from me, which I don't love that, but so I am letting emails kind of pile up a little bit. If you know, last night, like I came home and this was like after dinner. I spent an extra 2 hours just catching up on email.
Yeah.
You know, I told my wife, I was like, you know, after this thing launches, I need to take a break. I'm thinking like the last week of October, I'm going to take a short break, take a couple of days off, you know, hang out with my daughter, my wife, do something relaxing, maybe just sleep in or you know.
Yeah, unplug. I think that's good. It's healthy to do, and it's also healthy to have that to look forward to.
Yeah, totally. And then, I mean, on my mind as well, Restaurant Engine, I still put in a couple of hours a day, you know, doing some sales calls, working with my team, maintaining that. But in November, it's a big push in Restaurant Engine, going to kind of revamp some of the stuff we're doing with the sales process. Last week we talked all about webinars, so I'm going to implement a lot of that stuff. So looking ahead to November, I've got a lot of things planned for Restaurant Engine, but right now it's the course. Then I'll take a short break. I'll be refreshed and have a good ending to the year, hopefully.
Right, jump back on Restaurant Engine.
Yep.
Very cool. Well,
Yeah.
good luck with all of it. Sounds like hard work, and it should pay off.
Cool. So what's up with you?
So I think a pretty similar situation that you're in, right? I have two projects that I'm looking at. I have CartHook and I have consulting, and I'm in the same boat. It's reversed. Right now, you're working on the info product side and not the restaurant engine side. And for me, it's the reverse. I'm spending a lot of time on CartHook, very focused on it, and building out the systems there. And then once that's in place, next month, I'm looking to focus more on the consulting and info product side of things. But for CartHook, I've gotten to this point. I don't know if it's just me or if this is a natural thing. What happens to me is I go through these cycles where I'm, my average productivity, and then it dips. And then I get so frustrated with myself that it hits this point of, maximum frustration, and I just say, fuck this, and then I, go 100 miles an hour. So I'm at one of those points where I got frustrated with myself for not making enough progress as much as I wanted to, and now I'm kind of in overdrive, and this whole week have just been tearing it up. And was really inspired by our episode, funny enough, by our own podcast on outsourcing. And so I've had all these things in my mind, and this week I just said, screw it, let's just move. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to a bunch of different developers. I talked to my co-founder. So now there's a lot happening all of a sudden. My co-founder is building out these really important features that are necessary in order to capture some of the bigger clients. A lot of bigger guys that came up along the past few months and wanted certain features that we didn't have. I didn't want to build them for individual people because it didn't make sense. Now it's time to make the current client base happier and to be able to attract bigger clients. So he's working on those features and the onboarding stuff and different things on the back end. And now I'm hiring a developer to build out more integrations with new e-commerce platforms. And then that leaves me in the middle to work on the marketing. So I'm redoing the marketing site. I've got this sales funnel built. I've got a whole plan for advertising and landing pages, and I've got an AdWords guy who's doing research. So just kind of gearing up to get after it. Combine that with some cold email approach. So that's really been the past week or two. Just getting really focused on what should I be doing? What do I need to put in place this month so that a month from today these things start to run on their own and start to capture leads and sales and free trials on their own in a more consistent way.
Yeah, and it's like you said last week, talking about building assets. The stuff that you're working on right now, like you said, it's going to run on its own and continue to produce without you. And I think once you start getting to outsourcing, as you've been doing, that does kind of like force you to be productive, in that it forces you to really make a plan and put that plan into action. Like give your team instructions. Right. Tell them like, look, this is the plan. I've come up with it. Now you go do it, and it kind of forces you to like commit to that. Whereas when you're doing everything yourself, you can kind of afford. I mean, afford is the wrong word, but like since it's all you can take a day off and
right.
I'll do it a little bit later, or I'll change up the plan a little bit. It's just me doing all the work. But when you give it to someone else, now you have this like responsibility.
Mm-hmm. It turns the spotlight. Puts the spotlight right back on you. So, I talked to my co-founder. He's got a full-time job, but he does the development work, and he's like, "Okay, cool. I'm ready. Give me the details of the new features, and I'm ready."
Yeah.
Then it's just okay. Now it's on me, and it just turned the spotlight back on me, and magically you're more productive that way, right? We've talked about this in our pressure episode. It's just human nature.
Indeed.
Yes, and now while taking a lot of this action on CartHook, I can't help but start to at least think about what I'm going to do in the future for the consulting and the info product. So, I can't keep my mind entirely focused on one thing. That just seems unnatural to me. So while I have a month of work to do for CartHook, in that time I also have a month to think about the right strategy so that when November comes around, I'm not starting to think about it then and saying to myself, okay, what should I do on this front? I already have my plan in my mind. I'm writing things down on different options. I have like a bunch of pieces of paper that have like little funnels from like Facebook ad to webinar to this. So just mapping that out in my brain and on paper now while I'm doing work for CardHook so that I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I'm in the same exact position as well with Restaurant Engine. I know exactly what I want to start doing there starting in November, but I'm also acknowledging, like you are, that, okay, we have these plans, they're swirling around in our heads. The easy thing to do is like stop what we're doing and just work on the shiny new thing. Oh, we just got this idea for a funnel, let's go do that. We're saying, okay, we're gonna do that in November, or we're planning to do that in December. It's on the list. It's in the calendar. That will happen, but we're staying focused on the plan at hand.
Right, and in a way, I think it's energizing because by the time November comes around, you feel like an arrow in a crossbow that's just all wound up. You just want to work on it already. So that'll bring some momentum.
Cool.
Yes.
With that momentum, should we shoot into this episode and start answering some of these questions?
Let's do it. Yeah, we both kind of reached out to our networks and asked some listeners, and people came back with some very interesting questions. A lot of things that we don't normally think about. A lot of things that are the same issues that we think about each day. So
and if you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask us, we will be doing an episode like this again. So you can always ask your question. Go to bootstrappedweb.com/ask and tell us all about what you're working on. Give us your URL, and so that we can actually take a look and tell us what's kind of challenging you. Maybe we can give you an idea or two. Let's get into the first one. This is from my buddy Matt Medeiros. He's the host of Matt Report. Really awesome podcast, especially if you're in the WordPress space. It's kind of like the WordPress business podcast. Pretty cool. And he and his company recently launched a WordPress plugin called Conductor, which is pretty awesome. It literally lets like drag and drop content throughout your website, no matter which theme you're using. So it's pretty cool.
Really?
I actually worked with him as kind of a informal advisor, giving them some feedback and whatnot. So that's at conductorplugin.com, and his podcast is at mattreport.com. And Matt says to us, he says, "Gents, I'd love to hear your thoughts on product launch and specifically promoting a launch. For example, if you're going to launch a product, are you of the ilk," I like that word, ilk, "are you of the ilk to package it all up with 101 giveaways, an iPad mini, and a 50% off coupon, or soft launch it, make it known that it's available, but kind of just grind it out and find that qualified customer?" So a couple of things here to unpack this question a little bit. I guess the first part is, should we do like a big anticipation, splashy launch day, or should you just kind of go live on your website and then start to build it up piece by piece? What do you think about that, Jordan?
I'm thinking that I'm just looking over at the conductorplugin.com website, and it looks great.
Awesome.
I couldn't help it. That sounds like something. Yeah, I use the Divi theme from Elegant Themes, and it's a lot of that drag and drop content because I don't do code, and it is liberating for a marketer to have that type of control over the design and layout. So I think it's an awesome product. And I think it's one of the biggest selling points of the Divi theme. So to think that you can apply it to other themes all of a sudden really opens up your mind. That's why I freaking love WordPress. It's just never ending, the innovation and creativity. It's like right as you get to a point where you're like, man, I really wish I could do this. That's when people start to hit on it and start to offer it.
Yeah, totally. But I think he's kind of referring to his launch of Conductor, which was just kind of launched recently, or it's kind of in the process of launching right now.
I know. I just couldn't help but talk about it.
Yeah, totally. And I kind of know Matt, and he has built a really great audience. He's got a fantastic podcast. He actually has a number of WordPress-related podcasts. So something like over 1,000 YouTube subscribers, and they've got like a private membership area. So he does have a sizable audience that he's launching to, and since that's in place, and since he's spent the last few years building up that audience, then yes, I would say a big launch event would really apply well here. And I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean like if you don't have an audience, you shouldn't do a launch event. I think you should. The example that comes to mind is Gravity Forms a few years back when that first launched. I don't think many people knew who Carl Hancock was. He runs Rocket Genius, the company behind Gravity Forms. But I remember it was like a huge launch event. He reached out to all the other big name companies in WordPress, and they all started promoting Gravity Forms. And all of a sudden, within a matter of like 30 days or something, like this product, Gravity Forms, just all of a sudden it's on everybody's radar, and it became one of the biggest selling WordPress plugins out there. So I think it does make sense to build up a lot of anticipation there, but a big but here, Matt, you're talking about adding in like all these extra giveaways, like an iPad Mini or a 50% off coupon, or I wouldn't throw in extra unrelated giveaways like a free iPad or whatever it is. If you are going to add in some kind of bonus incentive on the launch day or in the first 24 hours or something like that, it should be related to the actual product. So maybe it's like it's an extra educational guide on how to use your WordPress site. I mean, something better than that. But I mean, it's pretty common to see some kind of launch day discount on the actual product. But I wouldn't go out and say like, here's our product, and you can also get these other products from like 5 different companies that are kind of unrelated. But
right, yeah. I think that'll attract the wrong type of person. I think what he wants to do, and I agree with you, if you have that type of an audience, even if you don't have that audience, but it's even more reason to do it with an audience, to do a launch. And right, once you get the launch going and that helps you build momentum, then it's available for purchase. But if you're launching a product, why not build that anticipation? I think someone who's done it pretty well over the past few weeks is Derek Halpern with his WordPress plugin for courses. I think it's called Zippy Courses, right? So I think he did a really nice job, and everything he did was focused on building anticipation towards solving the pain. And that's what I think Matt can do. Especially, he's got the audience, he's got the ability to communicate and send out his message. You don't need coupons and giveaways to drive interest. What you need to do is sell the dream that this is going to solve, right? Yeah. And that's what I think. That's what Derek did a great job of, where he just kind of talked about it, and then built anticipation, and then opened it up to a few people, and then is now talking about the success that those people are finding, and just slowly building more and more anticipation until the boom, it's available to the public, get it now event.
Yeah, totally. And also in that pre-launch period, a couple of weeks, even multiple months, that's a great time to be, as you're being very vocal and public about this thing is coming, you're also getting feedback. You're asking for feedback. You should be getting on the phone, getting on Skype calls. We talked about in a previous episode doing that customer research. That's kind of what I've been doing over the last few weeks with this upcoming course. Is anybody who enters their email and expresses interest, in that early access or gets on the pre-launch list or whatever you want to call it, email them and ask them to get on a phone call with you. And I've been doing these calls, and they are you get so many insights from them, and that's how you're going to find that qualified customer. So you can even begin that like customer research before you launch, as you lead up to it, and then you can continue doing it down the road, especially as you see who's actually paying money for this thing, and that'll probably change over time. So you'll never really stop doing that customer research. But
yes, but I think the big opportunity he has with an audience is to make the hypothesis on who the qualified customer is, and then start talking about the problem. And then and that will help people identify whether or not this is something that's interesting to them. And then you'll get fewer people than if you were doing giveaways and iPads and that sort of thing, but you'll get the people who have the problem. right, in the WordPress world, right, there's the developer audience, and then there are the people like me who are incapable of doing things on WordPress and look to plugins to help us overcome those shortcomings. So if he's got a big audience, to then identify, hey, we've got this thing for people who don't want to code but will allow them to configure their content in a certain way, drag and drop, really simple, works on any theme, right? That would make me perk up, while at the same time it would get someone like you to say, not for me, who needs that? That's just a bit of code. And then the right people will start to come forward. Maybe it's a smaller number of people, but it's a better group.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next one. This one is from another Matt. This is Matt Ward. He runs theartofthekickstart.com, and he's also the host of the Business and Bootstrapping podcast. So Matt writes, "Hey Brian and Jordan, just heard your episode today about consulting, outsourcing, and productizing today, and I loved it. Thank you, Matt." And then he goes on to say, "I recently pivoted to Kickstarter, crowdfunding, and product-based businesses with my site, The Art of the Kickstart. It's a podcast and blog all about helping inventors and entrepreneurs launch startups via crowdfunding. So right now I am consulting for 2 different Kickstarter campaigns, which is going well, but I need to be able to get more clients in order to make it a more sustainable, real business. Would love your advice, feedback on my site and approach, and ways to build a better funnel and possibilities for productizing the business."
Yeah, so interesting. The whole Kickstarter thing is a bit of a mystery to me. Yeah, but what comes to mind for you, right, from that email from Matt? I definitely have my take on it, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think I mean, me as well. Kickstarter, it's something I've seen it out there, but I've never really taken part in it, or really, it's hard for me to kind of relate to a lot of the pain points that happen with Kickstarter campaigns. In terms of productizing it, of course, you'd want to, start focusing on what your customers are saying and the questions that they're asking and the challenges that they have. But, perhaps it's something around, I'll help you optimize your Kickstarter page, write the copy for you, or help you produce a video, or maybe you do that, and I'll give you an audit or a feedback and give you some like 10 to 20 actionable things that you can do with it. So those are just some ideas. But the other concept here is that, you're asking, right now I'm consulting for 2 different Kickstarter campaigns, but I need to make it into a more sustainable business. I mean, you have 2 clients already, so that's fantastic, and it sounds to me like it's just an issue of being patient with it, right? I mean, two clients is actually huge, because it's so hard to go from 0 clients to 1 client, right? That's a huge leap to get over, somebody to actually pay for your service. So right there, you validated something. So now it's a matter of building on top of that, understanding what was it that actually sold those first 2 clients. Like, what was that thing that was in their mind? Like, maybe the key question that they asked you, and then the answer that you gave them, that kind of sealed the deal. Like, usually you can kind of feel that out in those pre-sales conversations. And then once you get onto the 3rd, 4th, 5th client, you start to see that pattern, and that's how you figure out not only how to productize the business and nail down exactly what that service is that you'll be offering, but it also helps you market it, in your copywriting and communicate it better.
Right, and if you can show them success, then you can use that and leverage that in your marketing and in your message and moving forward. So I think the disconnect in my brain on the Kickstarter front is that, and I could be completely wrong, but my assumption is people come to Kickstarter or a similar platform because they need money. So you're inherently dealing with an audience that doesn't have a lot of money to spend, which doesn't sound like a very healthy place to be. But I could be wrong on that, right? Because at the same time, they are investing a certain amount of money, and people know that in order to be successful in a Kickstarter campaign, you do need to spend some money. you do need to create the right video and write the copy and a bit of a prototype or something to that effect that adds value, and partner with a charity, right? All these things that people add on to the Kickstarter page to really make it effective. Where my brain goes is it's a great opportunity to do the content marketing of blogging and being a resource as a podcast and a blog, and then figure out from these two clients what is the most painful piece, what are they trying to achieve, what are they willing to pay for, and then focus on that and standardizing that, right? If I were doing this and I'm concerned about my invention or my product and going overseas and the specs, all these things that I'm worried about, and then I look to Kickstarter and I say, oh my God, I gotta do that perfectly if I want to succeed. If someone came to me and said, look, $2,500, your whole page, your video script, all the pieces that you need, I'll help you settle out the tiers, what you'll be giving away for each commitment tier, and just a done for you, like I've done it before, my clients achieve this much over the average Kickstarter campaign, and it's worth your $2,500 because I'll take it off your plate and it'll increase your odds of being successful. You know, that to me sounds like something more lucrative than, are you having problems with your existing campaign, let me try to fix it for you. Because how much are people going to be willing to pay for a fix-it service as opposed to a done for you, like you focus on your product, I'm going to make your Kickstarter campaign and page amazing, and yeah. I know how to do it, here's the proof, and you read my stuff on the blog, you listen to me in the podcast, I know what I'm talking about, I'm the expert, you want to pay me the premium, get it done right. Yeah,
exactly. I would agree with that. You know, certainly build on the audience that you're already building, which is a fantastic way to start and get that customer feedback, build your authority in that space. You know, it's really about figuring out what is it about Kickstarter that somebody who wants to start their very first Kickstarter campaign, what is their biggest challenge, their biggest hurdle, or the biggest pain that they need to overcome? Like, is it that they're completely overwhelmed, like they heard about Kickstarter on some TV show, but they have no idea how to use the internet or how to use Kickstarter? Or maybe they're a little bit more savvy, they just need ways to actually optimize, and they don't want to, you know, put all their efforts to waste.
Right.
So it's really just about understanding those pain points. You made a good point, Jordan, about you know, these might be clients who don't have money to spend. That may be true. That may not be. There might be some. I'm thinking of like the you know, like physical product manufacturers. If they're planning to invest in building an actual thing, you know, maybe they have money to invest in this. Maybe not. I don't know. But
yeah,
you know, one idea when it comes to pricing could be maybe charging as a percentage of the money raised on Kickstarter, you know, so it's like if you make money, then I make money type of thing.
Anytime you can have like a no-lose commitment type of thing, that can be helpful. Might be a little risky, but you can take a little something up front and then something on the back end. Mm-hmm. Bonuses for certain levels reached. And one tactical tip that comes to mind: people on Reddit are freaking crazy about Kickstarter and these types of campaigns, and a lot of guys that are successful in their Kickstarter campaigns do AMAs. And those AMAs get a ton of attention and comments, and that comment section, that's the gold. That's what you write about, what you talk about, what you offer. So there's a ton on Reddit. I would look for AMAs done by people who have successfully launched Kickstarter campaigns, and then just look at all the questions that the people are asking them on what they did right, how did it work, what did you do. That would be a great resource.
That's an awesome tip right there. Like literally, like every question or every popular question can be a blog post.
Yep, that's exactly it.
All right, cool. So let's move on to the next one.
So next one is from a buddy of mine, Alejandro Ruiz. So a guy I met online a few months ago. Very cool guy. SEO consulting. So smart dude. So he's asking about lead generation, and specifically on Facebook, and more specifically, how to automate it, right? So this is, I mean, I don't know how much you go to Facebook, but ads are now obviously a very big part of Facebook. They're in your news feed. I actually end up clicking on them a lot because I see very relevant ads, and people are retargeting because I went to their site. So I'm kind of into the whole Facebook ad thing as a user.
Every time I log into Facebook, I see a cart hook ad. I don't know how that happens, but I don't know.
Good. Okay, so what Alejandro is asking about, how do you automate lead generation from Facebook? And this is an interesting topic. This is one of the things that I think about all day, because this is I plan on using this as a strategy in November when I start refocusing on consulting and info products. So I think the big thing with Facebook, and this might be obvious to some but not to others, is not to go for the sale directly from Facebook. Right? People on Facebook are not on Google where they're typing in SEO Memphis, Tennessee. Right? They're not looking for a solution the same way. On Facebook, you're piquing their interest and pulling them away from Facebook into a different place. But to ask them to go from Facebook to a sale or to a consultation or to a big commitment is too much of an ask. I think Facebook needs to be a much slower burn approach, which is the classic offer something of value, lead generation, lead nurturing, leading up to an offer. So you can do the lead magnet into an autoresponder. You can do the Facebook ad into a webinar. You can do Facebook ad into an automated webinar. So any of these things can be automated, which is great. And Facebook advertising, once you get past the annoying roadblocks, can be hugely powerful. But that's how I would go about it, and that's how I've done it for the course, and that's how I plan to do it again for the for consulting next month. The only wrinkle is that my offer, I plan to do a phone consultation instead of a sign up or fill out a form.
Yeah, and you know, when you say lead generation or kind of like lead magnet, of course, what we're talking about here is some form of education. You know, you want to be giving away something educational. You're not trying to sell them on that very first ad. If they've never seen you before, never heard of you before, it's about here's something that you can learn from that's tailored to your interests. So, you know, maybe it's since you're selling SEO, it can be, you know, how to drive more traffic to your website without paying for ads. It's, you know, by boosting your organic search rankings and that kind of thing.
Right.
And then, you know, in terms of automating that, of course, you can have that can lead to an automated email autoresponder. You can set that up with Drip or MailChimp or any of those, Aweber or whatever. It can even just be as simple as like one video. You know, video, and especially on Facebook, it's like a very visual medium. So going from a Facebook ad into a video of you giving some really solid tips, you know, like things that will actually make you think, and so that the viewer will come away like, oh, I actually learned something. This guy Alejandro actually knows what he's talking about, huh? So
right.
I want to enter my email here and keep getting these free tips from him. You know.
Yes, and what I saw recently that I thought was great and very efficient. I saw a Facebook ad, right, and the ads themselves it's all about imagery. It's all about testing out different pictures, images, graphics. It's all visual. I don't think people look at the copy nearly as much as they do in other ad mediums. So it's really about the image. I use Canva. That's my designer hack of choice to make good-looking banners. And I think they have like a standardized Facebook ad for newsfeed. You just open that up and you can just create the background, create the button, make it look good, and then test out different versions.
I have noticed that Facebook ads tend to be like close-ups of people and like people's faces and smiling, because that's what you're used to seeing in Facebook. Your friends and family, you know. So
right, and that's what you want. You want them to feel this affinity towards you, this connection, and that's why I think you're right that video can be hugely powerful. So what I saw this past week, I saw someone run a Facebook ad to a landing page that was just a 15-second video of themselves with an opt-in. They're saying, in this video I want to give you, I'm talking about how to create online courses that sell, and how to make sure that your idea is going to be a successful online course before you go through the trouble to make it. So just opt in here and check out the video. That's it. You enter your email address in. The next page is, bang, a 4-minute video on going through the thought process of how to make your online course successful. And then in the email that's sent to you as a confirmation, it's like, here's the link to the video. I hope you enjoy it. I'll be back soon with more info for you. So that's it. Boom.
Yeah.
Quick 4-minute, 15-second video, 4-minute video, 2 quick landing pages using lead pages, and then they're on your email list, and you set up an email autoresponder after that, and boom, you have a new funnel.
Yeah, and then how do you actually connect this to making an actual sale, right? So, of course, it's all about providing value and education up front, getting them into an email autoresponder, continue to send more value. Maybe it's sending some recent articles over a couple of days. That can lead into an offer over email to get on a free consultation with you, but then you can also run retargeting ads on Facebook. So you can track, like, okay, this person has already opted in, or this person has already clicked on the ad once. That tags them as someone who can now be retargeted with a different type of ad, and maybe that's when you introduce an ad pointing to a free consultation, because they've already had 1 or 2 interactions with you by now. So that's how you can kind of connect, like, on Facebook, friends and family, okay, ad from a stranger, I'm going to get value, and then a week or 2 later, it's asking for some kind of like a free consultation.
Right, and that's the ideal. That's how you go from complete stranger, and this has happened to me a bunch as the subject over the past few months. You go from complete stranger, you click on an ad, you get value, and then all of a sudden you're being retargeted in Facebook and outside of Facebook, and you're getting emails. So if you give good value and you have that repetition, all of a sudden this person is now in your sphere, and you are familiar to them. And you have just a much higher likelihood of getting that conversion you want, whether it's a conversation or a free trial or a purchase of sorts.
Yep. Cool. So let's move on to the next one.
Cool. So this one is from my man Julio out here in Portland. It's part of my PDX MicroConf mastermind, even though I've never been to MicroConf. Really, really seriously, I've been saying this for 2 years, going this time. As long as I don't have another child, like 2 weeks, 2 weeks away from the date, like I did last time. So Julio, who I've met up with a few times, smart guy, developer. Here's what he's asking: do you have any tips for validating an idea whose audience is primarily offline? Right, this is a big challenge. So I've tried calling, but it's a hard slog. Not only is it cold calling, but these people often don't pick up, because they're busy working. It's the same reason they're not online to begin with. So what do you do in that situation? How do you validate? How do you sell? How do you reach this market? Fortunately, we have the luck of having an absolute expert on our hands here in Brian Castle, who deals with restaurant owners in his business. So what do you think? He's asking specifically, how do you validate the idea? But I think more generally is, how do you reach these people? How do you get in touch?
Yeah, it's tough. There's no getting around it. This is a hard thing to do, but it can be done. It depends on the market. I don't know, which market he's working in or what he's talking about, but you'd be surprised with restaurant owners, right? Like I'm surprised. I'm still surprised by that. Like, we don't do cold calling. I tried it a little bit. I tried some cold emailing as well. That didn't work at all. And maybe I can try it again sometime. But really, everything that we do is inbound, and you'd be surprised. We actually do get leads, restaurant owners coming into our site, and we've built that up through content marketing. Now, granted, this is probably a very small sliver of the worldwide marketplace or the worldwide population of restaurant owners. I'm sure 90% of them would never read a blog or never subscribe to an email autoresponder. They're just not in, like you said, they're offline. They're not online. But it's such a big enough market that if we can get 2% of them, to come into our sphere, and a percentage of those people to actually request a consultation from us, then we can make that phone call because they've asked it. They've asked for it. So we do make a number of phone calls every single day.
Not cold.
But they're not cold. These are leads who have filled out a request a consultation form from us.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's taken us a couple of years to build up to the point where we're getting, a regular flow of these leads coming in, and you can jumpstart that in the early days by doing paid ad campaigns, which we've done a little bit. We're doing more, but really it's been mostly about organic content, bringing them in. That kind of gets us into their inbox on a weekly basis, and then when it comes time for them to need a website or whatever it is that you're selling, you're the first name that comes to mind. They come back to your site, they fill out that request a quote for or request a consultation, and then you call them up. Now, the other issue that we run into a lot is, like for restaurants, they are very busy, especially around lunchtime and dinner time. Obviously, like sometimes we'll call up a restaurant and they'll be like, this is my lunch rush, I got to get off the phone. But a lot of times they'll say, well, but call me back in like 3 hours. So we do need to be mindful of what time of day it is, and because we're calling from different time zones as well. And there's myself, and I'm on the East Coast, and my teammate Ashley, who's in California. We're both making these phone calls. She's doing them more than I am, but so I've actually structured like her work schedule around the optimal times to call restaurants on the East and West Coast. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Right. I think he's got a bit of a trickier. I mean, your answer was essentially, it's really hard to do it, and we have found a way around it by doing inbound, right?
I think the answer, well, at least for us, is that inbound can still work even for a completely offline audience.
Right, because there's still enough people out there, and there's the whole, what is it? Customer Safari? What's her thing?
The sales safari. And
sales safari, right? The message boards, and going and figuring out where they are online. Because look, I have a friend who owns a restaurant. He's not online nearly as much as I am, but he's not like in the Stone Age. He's still online.
Yeah.
It's just more limited. They're not as receptive as people who live online all the time. But I think, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the other point of this is we get a lot of people who are not necessarily restaurant owners themselves, but maybe they're consultants to restaurants. Maybe their brother or their mother or father owns a restaurant, but their techie son or daughter will go online and happily find the right solution. So we get a lot of that. So like referrals from the more web savvy will come in inbound, and then they'll recommend us to their parents or their brother-in-law or something like that.
I think Julio's situation is a little trickier in that he's trying to validate.
Yeah.
Right. So it does not make sense to spend time and energy on inbound and building up a web presence and content before it's validated. So it's a bit trickier. So what I have done for appraisers who are not super web people, is I found a resource in the Appraisal Institute, an online resource that basically has all their contact information. So I hired a VA to go and scrape the emails, and then I cold emailed a bunch of appraisers all at once. And that's what I would recommend to Julio as well. It's a little trickier if they're not very email focused, but making the cold calls completely cold, I think, is just really low likelihood of success, especially for someone who's not, a natural cold caller, which I know I'm not personally. I don't think Julio is either. If you don't have the stomach for that, it's really hard to be successful if you don't have that mindset. So I would still go email. I would just figure out a way to get their email addresses.
Yeah.
So there are state resources. There are people in these types of fields. They have to register their businesses. You can try to get emails that way. You can go to message boards. You can go online. You can go to magazines that they. I always like that. I always like looking where people are advertising, whether it's a trade magazine or just a local magazine, and then calling up the companies who are advertising, because they're just used to getting phone calls. They're ready for phone calls.
Yeah.
The whole point of spending money on ads is pick up the phone and call me, so they're much more receptive to it. But I think the in that you need is you need some type of a hook on either I'm working on this thing, would you be interested in talking to me about it, or I have nothing to sell, I just want to talk. right? You can either completely disarm, like, I don't have anything to sell. I'm just a developer and I'm doing research in your industry, and I'm talking to a bunch of other people in the industry, and I'm trying to really identify, the parts of your day and the parts of your business that are really annoying and difficult, and I'm building software for it. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Like, and that's very disarming. A lot of people, when given the opportunity to talk about themselves, will take it.
Yeah, and one other thing I would be careful of here is this market is completely offline, and if the market is too small in that you cannot even run a low budget ad campaign and get a few new leads in the door. Like looking back to Restaurant Engine in the very early days, before it even launched, before I even started building anything, I did run a few $100 AdWords campaign to a very rough landing page just to get people on the phone and get a pre-launch list going. And if I couldn't even get any restaurant owners to click on those ads in the sidebar of Google, I probably would have decided like this is not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I hear you. I think I would go dirtier in the validation phase, and instead of doing the PPC to landing page. And I think you're right that if you can't even get traffic, you can't get people to sign up there, then you might be barking up the wrong tree. But
yeah,
I think
it's going to be an uphill battle when it comes to actually marketing the product.
Right.
And then you come to the conclusion that like, look, these people are there. Of course, the market is there, but the only way to truly reach them is to build an in-person sales force. And if that's the business that you want to get into, great. But if it's not,
yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, I would say that the landing page with PPC is the next step for Julio, and the first step is just forming a relationship with 5, 6, 7, 8 people in the industry that you can get on the phone with. So if that means you need to dig and look for emails and look for who's advertising on Google and who's advertising in print, and I would use email to try to open things up, and anybody who responded, I would try to get them on the phone. And the whole point would just be to get into a normal conversation for 30 to 60 minutes with at least 5, 6, 7, 8 people, and then work with them. Okay, so this is what you mean, so this is the part that's painful. Okay, I'm going to go to the drawing board, and I'll come back and I'll show you what I've come up with that might solve your problem, and then just go do some wireframes, and then show those to the 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Is this what you mean? Would this solve the problem? Would this make your life better? How much better? How much time would you save? How much more money would it make you? And then once you say to yourself, okay, I actually am onto the right thing, and when I show people the wireframes of what it can do for them, they are excited, then I would take that and all the information you glean from the conversations and relationships and put that on the landing page, and then start that like pre-launch process.
Right. I think what you're describing there is kind of like the idea extraction process, starting with the pain point, starting with the customer in mind, without any kind of like, I don't know what I'm going to build yet, you need to tell me what to build. And I think that's really, really smart. But I'm not sure, but from the question, I'm assuming that he has like some kind of gut idea for the type of product and customer that he wants to build, and that was the same for me with Restaurant Engine. Like, I had the idea, and it's not a completely new thing. Of course, I knew that, of course, restaurants have websites and they need new websites, and there are other services that do this. So in that sense, I wasn't inventing something brand new. And if you are completely inventing a new type of solution to a new problem, maybe you do need to do some validation work there. But what I did in those very early days was, again, I ran some PPC campaigns to a very rough landing page, just throwing some words on the page like, here's how it works. And then I wanted to get on the phone with about 10 of them, which I did, and that was just to see if A, they would click on ads and I can get people incoming and to enter their email, and B, to see if they like even understood what it was that I was offering, to see if they could like digest like the concept. And
right, because people were used to just buying a website.
Yeah, and like I just wanted to hear from them in their words, like, how do you see this product? And then of course I asked a lot of questions like, what's the most painful thing about your previous web developer and all this other stuff. But I wanted to make sure that they weren't completely clueless as to what I was conveying here in this page. And when I had some really meaningful conversations and learned, exactly what the nuances of their pain points were, I felt confident enough to go ahead and then build it out, and then it goes from there.
Interesting. All right, cool. Well, I like that one. That's tricky, and it's applicable not to only the beginning phases. Yeah, but those tactics and reaching out, it's definitely stressful in the beginning phases to kind of give yourself some confidence that you're spending your time and energy on the right thing. And that's very closely related to the next question.
Yeah.
From another Portland local, buddy of mine, John Hooley, who's a developer, and he's asking, so I'm curious how other bootstrappers evaluate opportunities. Right? How do they assess risk and reward and decide how much time and money and energy to invest? And this is obviously relevant to anyone who's bootstrapping, because your resources are limited, your finances are limited, and your time is limited. So you have these decisions to make on what opportunities to pursue and what to ignore or to let pass. Right? If you say yes to everything, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing, if it's consulting or product, so how do you assess an opportunity that either presents itself or that you have an idea for? It's it's a mixture of your gut feeling and some hard numbers and looking at the market. You have any thoughts on this specifically?
It is tough. I think for me, in the last couple of years, I struggled with taking on too many different projects and too many different startups at the same time, during the same year, and I really suffered from that. And the problem there was that some of them actually did okay, but they were just okay. And if I didn't focus on just one of them, then they wouldn't go beyond just okay, and things kind of start to stagnate. So yeah, I mean that's kind of actually the biggest risk, is taking on too many things at once. So I would just kind of focus on one big thing per year, and I know that sounds like a long time, but that's really what it takes to launch one business. And if you're really just starting out as a bootstrapper, maybe you're doing client work right now, or you're in a 9-to-5, you shouldn't be thinking about building the next MailChimp. You should be thinking about maybe starting with a WordPress plugin, or starting by selling an ebook, something relatively small. And writing an ebook or developing a plugin that actually solves a problem, that's by no means tiny. That takes some work. But it's getting your feet wet with something and getting people to pay for something that you've built, or productizing a part of your freelance service and seeing if people will pay for that. And then that's kind of stepping stone number one. And then that can fund your next product, which might be building a SaaS or building a mobile app or something like that. So yeah, I think as a bootstrapper, self-funding, it's about taking one small step into a slightly larger step into a slightly larger step. It's not trying to hit the grand slam home run right out of the park on day one.
Yeah, for me, the more I think about it, the more I hesitate on pretending like anything I say is worth a damn of advice. It's impossible to know. Everyone's situation is different. I really go with a combination of my gut and some math, but even that's misleading. The gut is notoriously misleading, but math itself, I flipped a few times in my career between this opportunity presents itself and how do I evaluate, right, whether I should do it or not. And I used to think to myself, is it doable within a reasonable amount of time so that I'm not going off track for 6 months? Can I test it? Can I figure out a way that within a few weeks I can at least get a hunch of whether or not there's something here?
Yeah.
So, right. So, and if it's just too big that it's going to take a few months before getting any sense of whether or not there's anything there, then I historically haven't done it. I've said to myself, how do I test this? How do I, before diving all the way in, how do I figure out a way to dip my toe in whether that's like going to Craigslist and offering it as a service. Don't laugh at that. That's a great strategy for validation.
It is.
And then I've also flipped between that and if this isn't a multi-million-dollar opportunity, then ignore it. Then don't look at it, because you got to know what inning you're in. I like that saying from my brother's father-in-law, very very successful guy. He always talks about the inning that you're in your career. If you're 22, you're in the first inning. You could swing away, go for it. But if you're a little later on, you got 2 kids, you're in your mid-30s, like we are, you kind of have to be more careful with your at-bats. And so I used to look at them and say, if this isn't an idea that has the potential to make multiple millions, then why am I messing around with it? Because if my goal is millions of dollars, then why go after that? Now, sometimes that has worked out, and sometimes that's wrong, because you don't know where ideas can go, even though they feel small in the beginning. So there's, what I'm saying is I don't know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to this. I don't think anybody does. It's impossible to look for advice. You just kind of have to go through these things and then use your gut. But go ahead.
Well, I think this question, the place to go for advice, read Dan Norris's new book, The 7-Day Startup.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's free. He's going around really promoting it right now, and it's really worth the read. Now, I haven't read all of it, but I've heard him go on different podcasts and kind of talk about each chapter individually. The ideas really apply here, and I think what he's saying here, and it's kind of the story of his business, WP Curve,
right,
is when you're bootstrapping, as a bootstrapper, you're in this you have these unique limitations that other companies don't have. Like, you have to figure out if it's viable, and you have to do that quickly because, like John is saying in his question, he doesn't have the time to risk a whole year on something if it's not going to work out. So in Dan Norris's story, like, he literally launched WP Curve to paying customers in, I think, 7 days. And I actually had Dan on an early episode of this podcast when he talked about that story in depth. And literally what he did was he put up a landing page, live WordPress customer support, buy now, and it was just Dan, and he had live chat on the website, and then at night, it's a 24/7 service. At night, he had the cell phone by his pillow. He took live chats, just bootstrapping it, and doing that, he got 10 paying customers in 7 days, and then from there, that was enough for him to develop it further, start hiring a team, and then scale it up. And now they're adding, lots of customers every month. I think they have a team of over 20 people. They've built it up. It's growing rapidly. So, the thing is, like, I think the concept behind his book, 7-Day Startup, is you have to go in with these limitations, like something that I can validate with paying customers in as quick as like a week. And that means starting with something fairly small, but that can eventually grow into something bigger. I know it's a little bit vague, but
yeah. So let me ask for some clarification on it. So what's the gist of what he's talking about? Is it that you need to validate, or ignore validation and just put something out there and offer it right away?
My sense is it's the latter. It's like putting something out there and offering it and seeing if people will pay for it. Like, let's say you're studying the email marketing niche, and you're saying, like, look, there's an opportunity here to build a competitor to MailChimp that will do automated email responders, and it would work fantastic as a SaaS. I think there's a lot of money here. It can turn into a multi-million-dollar business, but it will take a year to develop even just a prototype because it's so complicated.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's
that's a huge opportunity. That could be a fantastic, huge business. But if you're bootstrapping, you have to say to yourself, like, no, that doesn't meet my criteria of something that I can viably tackle this year.
Yeah, you have to mitigate the risk.
But if you start with maybe productizing one of your services, doing the work manually, getting 10 customers to pay you $100 a month or something, that's something that you can build on, and then you can hire a team, and then a year from now, 2 years from now, your business has grown, and now you're in inning 3, and now you have money that you can invest into building that next MailChimp or whatever it is that comes along then.
Yes. So I always see when someone, when I hear I've been working on this for 3 months and I'm almost ready to launch, is just a heartbreaking thing to hear. So I think I think what we're circling around is speed as a necessity.
Yeah.
You can't mess around for months on something before it brings in money as a bootstrapper, because you're going to get yourself into a bad situation.
Yep.
So you do need the ability to figure out whether or not this thing is viable, whether you want to call that validation or putting up a landing page that says buy now and then telling the people that it's just about ready, I'll get it to you as soon as I can, or or emailing your current customers or reaching out to people cold, or whatever it is. When you have an idea, I guess you need speed in order to figure out whether this thing is viable.
Yeah. Cool. So we have one more question here, and this is actually 2 different people, and they both replied to my email newsletter this week, and they're both kind of asking about outsourcing consulting projects. So the first. So I'll read both quotes because they both kind of relate to the same question. So the first one, he says, I've tried 2 times to hire or outsource some of the work of a consulting project, but since I have very low prices compared with my competition, it doesn't allow me to hire very good developers. So how can I start to increase project prices without losing clients? And that's a tough question for sure. But let me read the next quote here. And that is, one of the challenges that I'm facing is around pricing projects that I'm mainly outsourcing. Mm-hmm. In the past, I've added a small percentage on top of the development costs for my own, quote, fee, but I'm not convinced this is the best or fairest option, as I tend to spend a fair bit of time communicating and orchestrating the projects. So I'm not exactly sure if I understand his challenge there correctly, but I think I do. And so what the second person is kind of saying is like, he's got these costs for the developers that he's outsourcing to, and let's say the devs that he'll hire on a project will cost him $1,000. Then based on that, he'll go and price the project with some small percentage on top of that, like $1,200 or $1,500. Now I think the problem there is, you're basing your quote to the client too heavily on the cost of outsourcing, and
right.
Maybe he's implying here, like he's saying to his client, like, well, I'm going to source these developers and outsource your project. No, I mean, the way that I've always done it, not to be completely hiding the fact that you're outsourcing or that you have a team working with you. I think that's perfectly fine. But the point is, when you're in those conversations, you and your client, it's you're hiring me or you're hiring my company, and we will deliver this solution to you, and you don't need to know about how I get that done in our back office. We have a team, we have our processes, we have our own internal costs, but my conversation with you, the client, is about what is this project and how valuable is it to you, and I'm going to price that project based on the value. So I wouldn't let the client in on all the math that goes into, well, I'm doing the
what's your
piece, and then the development costs this, and then the design costs this. No, I mean, the whole project as a whole costs $15,000. And that's all they need to know. And if that client will receive an additional $100,000 this year in sales because of the fantastic website that you're delivering to them, then that's a no-brainer value proposition right there. So you have to take it from that point of view. And I think that speaks to the first question as well. So, like, how do you begin to increase your prices? He says in the beginning that he currently charges very low prices compared to the competition. And that sounds like you're competing based on price. And in the consulting game, especially web development, that is you're not going to win when you compete on price, because you're competing with Odesk. You're competing with guys who will work for $2 an hour.
Right. You're not adding value.
the value cannot be I charge less than the guy next door. Frankly, when I was doing freelance web design, I won a lot of projects because I came in as the highest priced bid. And you have to kind of have the track record and the confidence to go in there saying, look, I know exactly what you need. I understand your business goals. You have to consult with them on those business goals and understand like where they're coming from, what are the most important, point number one, point number two, and how are you going to drive that home and present a proposal that says, look, this is what this project is worth. We've done this for clients again and again.
Right, gotten these results.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is obviously a really, really tricky piece of freelancing and consulting, and there's a huge number of people that deal with it. So let's start off with the caveat that this is easier said than done. Right? Yes. When you're in the situation and you're getting some work and you need the money and you're worried that if you bid $2,000 instead of $1,200 that you're going to lose the project and you really need the $1,200, that's real life and that's more difficult. But that doesn't mean that you should be satisfied with being in that situation. So everything we're going to talk about now, we're a bit dismissive of the fact that it's difficult and it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to, of course, in your first year of freelancing or consulting, your rates will be lower than what they are in your second or third year of consulting. Like, you should be raising your rates. Of course, at a certain point, you'll reach a ceiling, but I think by that time, by the point you reach a ceiling, you're well beyond that dollar amount where you can afford to outsource, part or all of the project.
Right. I think the biggest thing that we're talking about is the difference between selling a solution to a business problem and selling technical ability or a technology or your hours. I think that's the biggest thing. This is something I came across in a very interesting way when going through Sam Ovens' consulting course. Okay, so Sam is a smart, cunning, wily businessman.
He's a character.
He is a character. So one of the real pieces of really great insights that he brings to this is that he completely ignores this situation entirely. He completely ignores this reality or hours or anything because he does not assume what the other person knows and needs. He just, so a lot of the students in the course, they kind of had difficulty reconciling, how do I charge $10,000 for a WordPress site that I'm having someone on Odesk build for $350? It's like such a big disconnect that it almost feels like unfair or wrong or immoral in some way, and that's kind of Sam's genius in finding prospects that need the business solution more than anything. Right now, I'm looking for a JavaScript developer to develop a Shopify plugin. Like, I'm not going to give anyone that much money because it's a very defined thing that I know I can find someone to do for me. But when someone has a business problem or needs more customers or something, the value that it provides them is the most important thing. So if you take this company and their website that's in the Stone Ages, that doesn't produce leads, that has terrible copywriting, that doesn't do what it needs to do, and bring that into the future, into the modern approach to web marketing and lead generation and nurturing and all content marketing, even if it costs you $500 for some dude on Odesk to build it for you, it's still worth a lot more than $10,000 to this business.
Yeah.
So, when you hear people struggle with these things, that it's almost like they have to break free of this situation and these types of clients and these types of projects to get into a situation where they're selling something where the price is high, but it's still very low compared to the actual value. Yeah,
and that's a great point, especially in the WordPress world. I mean, yes, these solutions are cheap. You can get a WordPress theme, you can get a couple of plugins for a couple $100, or you can hire a developer. You can outsource to a developer. It costs a couple $100, and then if you have those clients paying $5, 10, 15, $20,000 for a site, it can be difficult to wrap your head around that. This guy is saying, like, is the fairest option to raise prices?
Right. The fairest option is to make as much freaking money as you possibly can, so that you can hire even better quality people and continue to solve bigger problems and then make even more money. That's the fairest thing to you and to your clients.
Yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind here is that it's not just the cost. It's not just those hard costs of hiring the developers or paying for that plugin. That's not what you base your price on. You are still providing other types of value to your client, like just the fact that you're reliable. They're hiring you to deliver this high-quality site, to do the quality assurance testing, to communicate clearly, to understand their needs. I mean, all of that stuff, the project management, the consultation, that's really what they're paying for. And they're also paying for your track record of doing this for years. You know how to build a team. I mean, if they were to go hire those same developers, they wouldn't even know where to begin to even look for those developers or those resources or those plugins. So they're hiring your expertise and your background in this. Like, it's what you do, So it's there's a lot more value that goes into delivering a $10,000 WordPress site than just the cost of the hard pieces of that site. Right,
and I think an additional part of this conundrum that I always like to talk about is if you're trying to sell into a very sophisticated Silicon Valley startup, you're going to have a much harder time making a lot of margin, because these people are as sophisticated as you are, and they know as much as you are, and they just need to get something done. So what I like to do in the situations I look for as much as possible is as big of a gap in knowledge and sophistication as possible. So, right, the people that I've done some consulting work for, they look at what I'm doing and what I'm talking about as magic. They don't even know the first thing, how in the world this gets done. It's completely beside the point that it's a WordPress plugin that does it automatically, or that it's lead pages that connects to Aweber automatically, or that's not relevant. What's relevant is, what are you providing in terms of a solution, and how much time is it going to save them, and how much money is it going to make them? And if that gap is really big between their expertise and yours in this world, that's a good opportunity to make more money, because you're really adding a ton of value from where they are currently. So, right, for me to build a sales funnel for an insurance agent, I don't know anything about insurance. He doesn't know anything about sales funnels. But if I get him clients and each client is worth an average of $8,000, then I can charge him $15,000 for a sales funnel, and he is going to be ecstatic with the results.
Yeah.
And that's how you go beyond how many hours you spend on it into how much value you're providing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, especially when it comes to building like marketing funnels and whatnot, and websites. I think these guys are probably in the web design development business. I would push back on that a little bit. Like, there are more savvy clients who, like, I've had clients come to me in the past saying, we'd like you to use a WordPress theme. Or sometimes I've had a client say, like, we found this theme on ThemeForest,
right?
And we want you to be the web designer to set it up and implement it and make just a couple of design tweaks. And they paid $8,000 for that contract.
Okay, so that's
like they understand, but they understand that they're hiring me not to just push a couple of buttons, but just to be the reliable person who's taking care of it
and adds the expertise in.
Yeah, and communicates it and offers recommendations and things like that. So,
right.
And these tech startups, they know that they know that they can go and get a Squarespace site done for $8 a month, but they just want somebody to be on top of it. They have the budget to spend, So, in other words, what I'm saying to web developers out there, just raise your rates. People will pay it.
Right. And price based on value, and go after the people who it's most valuable to.
Yep.
Cool.
So I think that wraps it up. This was another long one. I guess they're all long these days. So
yeah, I guess
that's good.
nothing wrong with it. And Yeah, I think this is cool. This is fun to go after, and all of these things we all deal with, we all think about. It's good to just talk about, and I think it's good for people to hear our perspective on whether or not no one's going to agree with everything we say, and the two of us don't agree, among ourselves. Sometimes I don't agree with myself, often in the same sense. So I think it's just good to kind of hash this out, and then get to work testing and implementing, and yeah, just
totally, man. So let's wrap this up. As always, you can dig into to the backlog of episodes, and I cannot speak anymore. The backlog of episodes are available at bootstrappedweb.com. We've got a newsletter there as well. You can get new episodes sent to your inbox. We actually have to start hooking that up.
Yes, and we've got videos, right? We're recording these podcasts over video now,
yep.
So you can check out the video at bootstrappedweb.com for each of the episodes. And if you enjoy the podcast, we'd really appreciate a review on iTunes. That really helps us out in the rankings. Brian and I think a year from today we're going to drop everything and just be full-time podcasters.
Yeah, any day.
Any day. And we need your help, so give us a review.
Yep.
All right, cool. Get back to hustling.
Yep. All right, man. Have a good one.